You know, this is not something that people are going to blab around. You know, this is something you can tell them, you can trust them. No, well, I think whenever we started the TV show, you know, the reality show was, what, 5 years or something after all of this? We had dealt with it.
You know, some people, I've heard them saying, you know, you're hypocrites. Well, if you go back and look at everything that people have seen on our lot in television, you know, we've never claimed to be a perfect family. My parents have always actually stated, you know, we are not a perfect family.
Hey everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is Thursday, February 10th. I hope you're having a really good day. You know, I was busy last night. I did a video late and I released the video late about a lawsuit that the Duggar daughters had filed against the city of Springdale, the county of Washington, and 3 different workers, the former mayor, police chief, and a separate individual within a county position. And the case was ultimately dismissed after what the judge said was the plaintiffs failing to meet specific burdens of what would have been required to overcome a summary judgment. Ultimately, the 3 individuals that they were suing had immunity, but also the judge outlined specific reasons why each specific motion was dismissed, or each different claim was dismissed. One was they said that they failed to determine that the government workers actually knew it was illegal to release those documents. The other was they failed to show that they met the burden that they had actually suffered a specific emotional distress. And then there was another one regarding the privacy factor, because they basically said that the government was not under the impression that the information that they were releasing was private, and the judge outlined how a lot of people had known about what had happened to the girls. It's I guess this ruling isn't going to make everyone happy, right? There's people that fully believe that the girls had a case and had a right to get justice, and there's going to be other people that blame the Duggars for not doing more for their daughters. And whether I agree with it or disagree with it, you know, there is obviously going to be frustration in the legal system. We definitely do need to do more to protect people like the girls in situations like this. Unfortunately, the only way to do that is to implement changes within the departments that did this, and hope that the departments have changed their practices, that have better training, that people know specifically that these documents cannot be released, and just a better push overall to protect people to protect kids in general. Should the documents have ever been released? No, the judge agreed with that, and ultimately they had to dismiss the case. Is it sad for the girls? Yes. So Jill Dillard actually released a statement, and she's the only one yet of all of her sisters to say anything publicly, and she is very, very, very unhappy. And I can understand her frustration, so I will tell you and read to you what her statement says, which she released on her website. And she said this: "While we appreciate the hard work the court has put into our case, we highly respect the judge, we are disappointed with the ruling that the city and county statutory immunity protects them from our claims. It is unfortunate that bad actors under the guise of public service are given a license to intentionally inflict pain without regard to the innocent victims. Immunity exists to protect public servants in the event of human error. It's not to be used as an excuse to cause intentional harm." So this part of her statement is, I'm sure she's very emotional here. In this ruling by the judge, he said that they did not intend to cause intentional pain to the girls, that it was human error, that it was an error on their part. So it seems like Jill has a very different perspective into what she feels was done versus what the court actually found. And obviously that disagreement is leading her to feel frustrated. She continues, "Kathy O'Kelly abused her authority by illegally releasing police records. This blatant disregard for the law only underscores the need for tougher accountability of our government officials in many regions of the country. The level of immunity allowed in many jurisdictions is unsettling, and it is scary what evil is allowed to go unchecked simply because of a position someone holds and the statutory immunity that they can claim. Public service should not be a haven for individuals seeking to fulfill their own personal vendetta. Civil servants should not be allowed to weaponize their authority by disregarding the rule of law only before claiming immunity. It is imperative that everyone in public service be vetted for their integrity and commitment to the people they serve. So I'm going to pause here because, again, in this specific case, the girls and Jim Bob have said repeatedly that Kathy Kelly had a vendetta against the family. Unfortunately, the court, again, did not find that there was any sort of personal vendetta, and that Kathy O'Kelly actually testified that she was more embarrassed that a deadline had been passed in terms of the FOIA request, so the Freedom of Information Act request was made, and she felt that there would be legal consequences to her if she did not release this and did not respond to the request in time. They did not find, the court at least, that there was any personal vendetta that Kathy had against the girls or the family. So I'm just telling you what the legal aspect says. This was Jill's position. This is actually what the court ruled. The judge, in his ruling on page 13 of the ruling, did reference a testimony that Kathy had given as a part of this case, and this is what he said. By the time Chief O'Kelly from Springdale and Mayor Hoyt from Washington County discovered the existence of the FOIA request, the 3-day response deadline was already passed. Chief O'Kelly testified she was embarrassed that her department had missed the request and deadline. Mayor Hoyt testified his first glimpse at the request revealed he was over our limit of time. It is undisputed that defendants' actions were motivated by fear of possible legal consequences for a missed deadline. So it says that it's undisputed. That means the girls did not dispute the fact that the defendants were not motivated by a personal vendetta, but rather the defendants were motivated by fear of possible legal consequences for a missed deadline. In other words, it says they worried exclusively about compliance with one part of the FOIA and failed to investigate the other parts relevant to state law. So when he says it's undisputed, this means that the case facts, and when it's undisputed, that means both parties agree. So either she agreed with it in the court and is now not agreeing with it today, or she agreed with it for the sake of the case. I'm not sure, but the judge says that it was undisputed. We appreciate the hard work the court has put into our case and feel vindicated by the fact that the judge has recognized that the law was cleared, that the records never should have been released. As the court so poignantly put it, if the question is whether the defendants were ignorant of the law or grossly negligent in this application, the answer is absolutely. So that specific portion of they're taking from the court document is actually on the same page, and this is what the whole statement says by the judge, just to be clear. If the question is whether the defendants were ignorant of the law or grossly negligent in the application, the answer is absolutely. But that is not the question. The inquiry focuses on whether defendants engaged in conduct which they knew and believed to exceed the boundaries of authority. Here, the proof and all reasonable inferences point to the opposite conclusion. So if the question had been that they were ignorant and negligent, then he would have said yes, but that wasn't the question that they were forced to answer. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But he's basically stating that the evidence points to the fact that there was no vendetta. Finally, we end at this. The judge has made it crystal clear that the reports were illegally released. This should have never happened, and we hope this never happens again to anyone. It is what has compelled Derek to change careers and pursue law school in the first place, and we will continue to fight for victims' rights. In the pursuit of justice, the impact on victims, especially child SA victims, should not be an afterthought, and they should not be relegated to collateral damage. Victims need to be supported and protected, not hung out to dry simply because the end justifies the means. They have been blamed, shamed, and bullied into silence for far too long, so why are we surprised that perpetrators continue to be emboldened while victims are punished for their voice? This needs to change only when then can victims become survivors. So the final part, I think, is maybe a little bit of an expression about how she feels maybe about her parents and basically the environment that has enabled and allowed Josh to maintain his emboldened behavior of what he's done, because she says that they have been blamed, shamed, and bullied into silence for far too long. So why are we surprised that perpetrators continued to be emboldened while victims are punished for their voice? So she and her sisters have been silenced and shamed for years about what happened to them, while Josh lacked any sort of accountability and therefore was emboldened in what he did. You know, and the experience that they went through is not uncommon for most victims that have gone through something like the girls. Unfortunately, there's just too much protection for perpetrators. I 1000% agree with that. I also agree that more needs to be done to protect victims and to make it so that they don't feel afraid to speak out. The girls in this case did speak out on Megyn Kelly. They actually, in a way, defended Josh. And they did state that what happened to them was not as severe as the way it was being presented. And at the time, they may have believed that. They also could have been pushed to do the interview by their father. I agree that no victim should be shamed or bullied or silenced. So unfortunately, in this specific case, I don't know what the judge could have done differently, given that he has stated through considerable arguments in detail that they didn't meet the burden. And I just want to address what he said about statutory immunity. He says when it comes to statutory immunity, this is what he wrote. Assuming there is sufficient evidence on the first element to establish that the defendant should have known that emotional distress was the likely result of releasing these police reports, and further assuming there are disputed material facts as to the second and fourth elements, the defendants are nevertheless entitled to summary judgment because they are immune from liability. The court refers the reader to it and incorporates by reference its earlier discussion of statutory immunity. This type of negligent conduct fails to satisfy the definition of intentional tort under Arkansas law, and they are entitled to statutory immunity for their unintentional conduct. So he referenced the statutory immunity in regards to their claim of outrage. I did not see statutory immunity actually brought up in regards to invasion of privacy. And he did bring up statutory immunity in the disclosure, but there was more than just statutory immunity in this case. That was reasons why the case was ultimately dismissed. So I do hope that I feel sad that she's feeling so angry. I hope that, they can use this in a way to motivate them to do more and to maybe change laws to protect other people like them in the state of Arkansas. I agree that we need louder advocates, and it would be amazing to see Jill become more of an advocate. That would be such a testimony to her growth from separating from the family. What happened to the girls is abhorrent. What happened with the release of the documents is terrible. Ultimately, I do agree with the judge, though, that the parents not protecting the girls, not reporting it to the police earlier, and not stopping Josh led and inflicted more undue pain onto the girls. And that is the real tragedy to me, is what happened to them by Josh. That's what I feel is the worst. They should have been protected by the police, but they should have also been protected by their parents. All right, so what are your thoughts about this? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.